Don Miguel Ruiz, a spiritual teacher, once said, "Don't take anything personally. Nothing others do is because of you. What others say and do is a projection of their own reality, their own dream. Your ability to feel is one of your superpowers. Your feelings and emotions are responsible for invoking joy, bliss, happiness, and so many other beautiful things you've experienced in your lifetime. And in those moments where you feel the opposite, where you feel offended, sad, angry, or in this case, something has happened to you that you've taken personally, that you've taken onto yourself, there is still something beautiful behind this too. This is your teacher. What hurts you is telling you something. It is clear insight as to what still needs to be processed and released. You are a magical being, more magical than you even know. You already possess the ability to alchemize your feelings into something different, something positive and transformative. But what you need to do first is learn how. Let's talk about it. How not to take things so personally from someone who used to take almost everything personally and has come out the other end. So if you're watching this video, it's probably safe to assume that you are someone that tends to take things really personally, or you're just a sensitive soul, or you've at least had these experiences before in your life, and it's something that you want to learn how to release and move past from. Well, I'm here to tell you that it's super possible, not only because I have done it myself successfully, but because I have also witnessed other people do it, and I've worked with people to help them stop taking things so personally. Now, the first thing I want to kind of set straight is this is going to take time. So be patient with yourself. Be incredibly patient with yourself. Know that every single time you practice the techniques that we talk about in this video, you are actually one step closer to becoming the person that you want to be, or just someone who doesn't take things so personally. I also want to disclaim that besides the fact that this won't happen overnight, you might still sometimes take things personally. Although it's possible to kind of change your perception and your character as it relates to this so that you no longer take things personally, you are still human, and you will still have experiences where you might feel offended or you might take something personally, but what's going to change is how quickly you recover from it, and then how you even view the experience to begin with. And that's the exciting part. That's the juicy bit that we want to get to. The last thing I want to say is there are many ways to work on yourself, and there are many things that you can do to kind of get from point A to point B. Like, there are so many different routes of like self-healing and personal development that work. But what I will say is what will most likely guarantee the most success is if you're consistently working on something. Like, if you're jumping from one YouTube video to the next, one self-help book to the next, one, health professional to the next, and you're not applying the things that they're telling you or that you're learning about, and you're not applying that consistently, you're not going to get from point A to point B, or if you do, it's going to take some time. So you really want to be consistent with the things that you hear in this video. If you start applying them, or just whatever you decide that you want to do to help yourself, just be consistent with that and you will start to see progress. Now, let's get into it. I've talked about this in some other videos, but I was always someone that took pretty much everything personally, even if people weren't trying to attack me. I was so sensitive and my self-esteem was so low that anything that I saw as offensive or as hurtful would really eat away at me. And I was a spiraler. So not only was I taking things personally, I was spiraling, and I was pretty much crying every day. It was not an easy way to live life. And at one point I wasn't sure if I would ever come out the other end. Like, I was deep into this like dark tunnel, and I'm like, there is no light. Like, this is just the way I am. This is just the way I'm wired. Thankfully, I didn't think that for too long, obviously, but it was just a really hard time in my life because every day I was like on the defense, because if someone said something to me, like I knew that like it would ruin my whole day. It could be something small, like, Sarah, you have a pepper in your tooth or something like that. And I would be so embarrassed by that. And I would get all these intrusive negative thoughts. And I was just like, wow, I'm just terrible. I'm ugly. There's shit in my teeth that I like, whatever my thoughts would be, right? Like our thoughts are so creative. So if you want to stop taking things personally, the first thing you got to do is practice self-awareness. Like you have to be really aware of yourself and the moments where you're taking things personally. Like anything said after this is futile. Like it won't even mean anything if you cannot get this down. Like you need to have self-awareness. So self-awareness is really the ability to observe yourself in each moment and observe how you're feeling, how you're reacting, what your attitude is each and every moment. And that's super important because as you start to practice that self-awareness, you can start asking questions about why you're feeling the way you're feeling. Like, how was this feeling invoked inside of you? And if you don't have self-awareness, what we tend to do when we're not practicing it is we victimize ourselves and we put blame onto our external environment or other people. Now, that is a completely understandable response because other people can be triggering or our environment can be triggering. There are so many things that happen to us that are outside of our control that are sometimes truly tragic or are really difficult to go through. So it is an understandable response, and I do believe it's part of how we were biologically wired to respond. However, we are a very hyper-intelligent species. And we do have the ability to be self-aware, which I believe no other species has a capability of doing. Correct me if I'm wrong, put it in the comments. But from what I've read and what I understand, there's no other species that has the ability to do that. That is a gift because we can kind of surpass our biological wiring. What I'm saying is you can learn to stop taking things personally and not be so self-critical. So, you need to be self-aware. You need to understand what is triggering you and how you're feeling in that moment, how you're responding to something. You need to observe yourself and reflect and realize what's coming from you. Now, here's the secret. Nobody and nothing has the ability to offend you. We allow ourselves to be offended, meaning we allow ourselves to take things personally. It actually comes from within us. Everybody has their own pain, their own trauma, their own things that they're going through, and how they see you and how they see the world is based on that, is based on a reality they've created within themselves. When someone says something to you that offends you or that you're taking personally, they are creating an idea or thought in their mind and then spewing it out onto you. It is not based on your reality or any reality for that matter besides theirs. You can decide whether you take that on or not as truth. But know that it is not about you. You need to know that you are powerful. And you decide when you take something personally or not. So if someone is doing or saying something to you and you're taking it personally, you need to ask yourself why you are allowing to take that personally. Typically, it's tied to something from your past. It's tied to a trauma you've experienced. It's tied to some pain, some unresolved pain that's still sitting deep within you. And until you process that trauma and that pain, and what that hurt or whatever it is, that feeling, an emotion that's inside you that has not been processed, you will likely continue to take things personally because you're going to be re-triggered by that. So let me give you an example. Two people, person A and person B, drive an old 1995 Honda Civic that's beat up and has scratches and whatever all over the car, right? It's just like an older beat up car. Person A is so happy with their car. because it is all they can afford and they now have a means of transportation. Person B also got the car because it was all they can afford, but they are so embarrassed by the fact that they have a car that's run down, that's older, that's from the 90s, and they hate driving it around. They feel like they have no other choice because right now that is their best means of transportation because it's all they can afford at this time in their life. If someone goes to person A and says, your car is a piece of shit, person A is gonna laugh, right? They might even agree and be like, yeah, my car is a piece of shit. That's right. You know? And then they might have a good laugh about it, right? Like two people laughing at how a car is a piece of shit, and that's that. Person B, if someone goes up to person B and says, your car is a piece of shit, how do you think person B is going to react? It's not going to be a positive reaction, right? Because they already have that insecurity behind their car. The truth is, or the secret is, it's not even about the car. It's something deeper than that. It's something that likely has to do with like a persona that person B wants to show to the world. And they're embarrassed by the fact that they can't show that they can afford more. So maybe they have an insecurity about money. Maybe they have an insecurity about being judged and someone thinking down on them or thinking that they're poor. And those are the things that you need to reflect on and start asking yourself. Like, you need to dig deep as to why something is offending you or why you're taking something so personally. Because there is a story you're telling yourself. Now we're on to point 2. What is the story you're telling yourself? You need to ask yourself, what is the story I am telling myself behind this? What is the story I'm telling myself as to why this hurts my feelings, or why I'm taking this personally, or why this is offensive? You have to have that self-awareness in order to ask those questions, and then you need to dig deep, because that why, knowing where that comes from, is going to kind of complement the how you need to overcome that. So once you've dug deep. Oh my gosh, English is my first language, sadly. So once you've dug deep and you've got into your why, now we got to start moving on to how. How do we start letting go? Going back to the beginning, you need to be consistent, consistently working on yourself, consistently practicing that self-awareness, consistently asking yourself why, what is the story I'm telling myself? Then the how actually gets a little bit easier, because now there's a myriad of ways you can do this. Like, the how can be practicing breath work, for example. Like, when you're feeling you're getting offended by what someone is doing or they're saying, or just something in your external environment, you can breathe through it. You can do, my favorite is to box breathe, where I breathe in for 4 seconds, hold at the top, breathe out for 4 seconds, and hold at the bottom for 4 seconds. This is not a video about breathing techniques and the benefits of breath work. There are so many benefits and techniques and videos about that. This is about delaying the emotion or feeling that you're feeling in the moment you're getting offended and focusing on something else. Because here's what happens. When you stop responding to that feeling or that emotion that's being triggered consciously, right? You're consciously not reacting to it. Your goal is not to fight the feeling. Like, you got to let that feeling course through you. Like, it's something that is right now part of who you are and the story you've been telling yourself. You're learning to rewire the story you're telling yourself so that you have a different outcome, which is ultimately you not getting offended and taking things personally. But in the meantime, you're not going to jump from point A to point B that quickly, and you need to find something else to distract yourself or to allow the feeling to course through you without reacting to it. Breathing. This is where the breathing technique goes in. You don't even have to do box breathing. You can just breathe, but breathe deeply. In and out, and just focus on that. If you don't want to draw attention to yourself, you don't have to breathe so dramatically. You can just breathe in through your nose, but like, you want to focus on something else, and you don't want to respond to that feeling. What happens is, when we stop responding to our negative or really reactive feelings and emotions, eventually they will start to lose power, because what feeds them is our reaction. There's actually a really famous quote. I'm gonna find it and like put it somewhere here on the screen. But the premise of it was that your power lies within not reacting to your external environment. As soon as you react to your external environment, especially something that is like negative or puts you in a negative headspace, then you officially give it your power. So you really want to stop reacting to it. One thing that I find really helpful that has helped me so much is channeling that energy elsewhere. So in the beginning, when I was taking things really personally and I was constantly offended, which is funny to say the beginning because that was the majority of my life up until the last few years, but that energy is like coursing through me, right? Like those feelings, those emotions are energy in motion. So sometimes that can be channeled elsewhere. And so what I would do was like not react to it. I would like feel the hurt and pain that I was feeling and not respond, and kind of just like pretend to laugh or just do the breathing, that technique that I was telling you about. But then I would go off and I would do something with that, like to channel that somewhere else. So I would either like journal and like write about it, or I would go for a run. Even though I'm not a runner, I actually don't like running. But every once in a while when I'm in bad headspace, I'm like, I just need to like run and get something off my mind. Or sometimes I'd go for a walk too. A walk out in nature is like really good, but just like something to make that energy move. As long as you're also reflecting on it, asking yourself like, why did this hurt me? What needs to be healed? That's also a phenomenal question to ask. I would definitely write that down. Like, what needs to be healed inside of me? That'll help kind of clear out or clarify what it is within you so you can work through that. It is up to you whether you decide to take something personally or not. And by not responding or reacting to that person, you are already kind of protecting yourself and learning one of the most powerful tricks to the human experience there is. Don't react. Don't respond to those really strong emotions, the ones that invoke maybe a negative response. Breathe, let it pass, reflect, ask yourself questions why you're feeling that way. Learn who you really are and make your self-esteem or bring your self-esteem so high that people cannot get to you. People cannot offend you. And if you do have a moment or a day or whatever, especially if you're a woman, you know, we have our hormones, and you're not feeling that well and something is getting to you, give yourself grace. That's okay. We are human. We're having a human experience. This shit's gonna happen. That's okay too. So I hope that all made sense. Let me know if you have any questions. If you like what you saw, don't forget to subscribe, like, comment, and ring the bell notifications if you'd like to see any more videos when they are released. And thank you so much for watching.